Lenovo's latest PC handheld, which at the moment is the Windows-based Legion Go S, is a very solid and yet peculiar device once you spend enough time with it, because as an owner of other similar PC handhelds, such as the original Go, the Steam Deck OLED, and the ROG Ally, I find myself searching for indisputable evidence. This is the next big PC handheld by a major tech manufacturer, and it's better than those that came before it because of X, Y, and Z. But I'm feeling like I'm searching because you don't just pick up this handheld and feel that from top to bottom. Yes, the Legion Go S has X, but it's got a little bit of Y and absolutely no Z. And by that, I mean no Z1 Extreme. Instead, it's packing a little brother that in name kind of sounds like the big brother in the form of the AMD Ryzen Z2 Go proprietary chip that's exclusive to this Lenovo device. And for this reason, among others we'll get into, I think it's a big mistake to start looking at the handheld that started it as old news. In fact, I think the original Legion Go is finally on the brink of redemption in 2025, since its original launch all the way back in October of 2023. But before I get too ahead of myself, despite the modding I've done to my OG Legion Go that we'll discuss, the Legion Go S is packing a number of features that give it a leg up regardless. But is that enough to justify picking it up over similar offerings? That's the million-dollar question. And what is the performance experience like with dual booting operating systems? The usability, ergonomics, real-world challenges and gripes, that and more coming up. I'll tell you right now, I think the biggest upgrade the Legion S has over the Legion Go is memory. 32 gigs of LPDDR5X RAM as opposed to 16 for the OG Go and the Deck OLED as a matter of fact. And the Legion S has a pretty impressive display, albeit not OLED. It's 8 inches with an aspect ratio of 16:10, resolution of 1920x1200p, and it has VRR at 120 Hz, which I think at this point should start to become standard for these smaller PC devices relying on these iGPUs. No, the controllers are not detachable as on the OG, but there are a couple of key advantages that immediately derive from it. The first is that the fixed controllers make the device feel much more solid and rigid in the hand. Zero creaks, wiggle, or play at the joints. I feel very comfortable with holding the Legion S with one hand, which I can't say for the Go. And if you've never had the chance to hold the Legion S in hand and you have a Steam Deck, place it inside of the Satisfy grip case. And I'm telling you, it's very, very reminiscent of how the Legion Go S feels. Lenovo also took the liberty to engineer this thing with front-firing speakers. Though honestly, they don't quite pack the punch that I was expecting as someone coming from the ROG Ally. They're a bit on the tinny, hollow side, if you ask me, but it's something that can probably be improved with third-party software. And can you believe it? The view and the menu buttons are no longer in the far lower left corner of the controller as on the original either. So no need to swap Legion and view buttons for better ergonomic experience in game. I also love the fact that the micro SD card reader has been moved to a significantly better region of the device, far away from the two USB-C 4.0 ports up top. The original Legion Go never really had the micro SD card burnout issues that was suffered by the original ROG Ally, but when swapping cards on the fly using higher TDPs, I did notice that cards became noticeably hot, which can be a little scary if you're gaming on large 1 or 2 terabyte cards, because those are not cheap. So I think that's a really smart move on their part. And props to Valve for engineering the Steam Deck in this way from the very beginning. And I'm honestly kind of shocked that I feel this way. But outside of the overall footprint and this obnoxious vibration that's been appended to it, I kind of like how the mini trackpad on the Legion Go S functions more so than the original. I mean, the trackpad is so incredibly small, you'd think the user experience was a joke, but it's honestly pretty good. And it actually has real movement, so I can press it like a button versus a simulated press using vibrations as on the original. But again, the vibration on the Legion Go S trackpad is so terrible, so I recommend turning that off immediately in the settings. Now, I do prefer the volume buttons to be on the opposite side of the power button on the device to avoid accidental clicks as on the original. But this charging indicator light is a huge addition on the Legion S because I really could not stand having to unplug the original Go to gauge the battery status. Trigger pull customization feature is also a nice touch on the S, but I'm honestly probably not going to use this very much. Now, it feels like Lenovo's rounded D-pad may be inspired by the ROG Ally, but unfortunately it doesn't feel as accurate or as precise. It does have more give than the original, which was more on the shallow side. But I don't know, it kind of feels too mushy. Obviously, the absence of a kickstand and the absence of a carrying case really sucks. Outside of that, it'd be an absolute crime if I didn't call out the Legion S fan noise. I've updated all drivers to date, and I'm still getting this unusually high dB for anything 10 watts and up. This is across both Windows and Bazzite. There's not a whole lot of time that needs to be spent with the Legion Space software, because the software for the S is virtually identical to what you get with the Go. It's day and night from where it was when it originally launched in 2023, and it continues to be the central hub for Windows controller mapping, setting adjustments, driver updates, etc., with an integrated Games Planet storefront that nobody uses. And though you technically can, I don't launch games from here, but it's the easiest and most reliable way to update BIOS and graphics drivers, and it's honestly one of the primary things that's keeping me from wiping Windows completely in favor of Bazzite. I don't want to have to jump through hoops for BIOS updates, and I want the flexibility to test drive AMD's new rollouts and to play unsupported Linux titles. So dual boot it is, for now. But it's really cool to be able to get a glimpse of how the Legion S loaded with SteamOS will potentially look and feel when it launches sometime in May. And that's a great segue into performance. Now we're going to look at some graphs comparing Cyberpunk 2077 performance with Windows versus Bazzite across various TDP levels. These numbers for this graph in particular were derived without the aid of any FSR upscaling techniques and no frame generation. Resolution is 800p and graphics are set to low. To state the obvious right off the bat, generally speaking, across all devices you'll notice Bazzite primarily generates anywhere from a 5 to 10 FPS increase over Windows for each subsequent device. And while the DEC OLED is generally the king at generating the highest frame count at the lowest TDP levels versus Windows, this isn't the case when Bazzite is thrown into the mix. 10 watts, the DEC averaged 21 FPS, while Legion S Bazzite came in at 24 FPS and 29 FPS for the OG Legion Go. At 15 watts, the DEC comes right up behind the Legion Go S, 38 FPS for Legion S, 37 for the DEC, and the OG pulls in 44 average. And when I maxed out the Legion S TDP at 40 watts, it still came in behind the OG Go at 30 watts, 59 FPS versus 61. The next graph shows performance for 800p for Cyberpunk as well, with graphics set to low, but with FSR active set to performance. Interesting finding here, the Legion S at 15 watts for Bazzite actually outperformed both the DEC OLED and the original Go using Bazzite as well. But at 20 watts, the original OG Go promptly moved ahead. I noticed some oddities like this a few times during comparison, so there are some rare cases where the Legion S can deliver stronger performance at lower TDPs. Keeping resolution 800p with FSR to performance, but setting the graphics preset to high at 15 watts, the Legion S tied with the Go at 43 FPS. And from then on, 20 to 40 watts, the Legion S comes in behind the Legion Go per TDP. Now for this chart, we keep the high graphics preset, FSR set to performance, no frame generation, but in-game resolution is brought up to 1080p. Anything below a 30 FPS average for a game like Cyberpunk, I consider to be unplayable. And yes, you can use frame generation, but I really want to focus on raw performance for these graphs rather than manufactured frames. Now when it comes to Windows OS performance, which is the weakest, we don't even begin to touch the 30 FPS mark for Legion S until we bump the TDP up to 30 watts. And as you can see, even for Windows for the Legion Go, we're able to hit 30 FPS at a 20 watt TDP. When it comes to Bazzite, however, the Legion S hits a 36 average FPS at 20 watts to the Go's 42. And to my disappointment, the Legion S wasn't able to scratch 41 FPS without pushing the power to the very brink of 40 watts. So in terms of battery life, using this example, even though the Legion S has a 55.5 watt-hour battery to the Legion Go's 49.2, you could run Cyberpunk at those parameters and hit over 40 FPS for a little more than 2 hours for the Legion Go, while the Legion S would afford you similar performance at those parameters, but at the cost of only roughly 1 hour of battery life. So in general, yes, the Legion S has the bigger battery of the three, and the largest RAM at 32 gigs, but the AMD Z2 Go processor unfortunately bottlenecks it. So much so that you're unable to fully appreciate the double RAM size or the increased ceiling from 30 to 40 watt TDP. So at the end of the day, Lenovo's Legion Go S is the light version of its predecessor that has more power, and yet the 1TB models of each have extremely comparable price tags. But I don't think that that's the biggest issue, because I know a lot of people out there are willing to bite the bullet in that department as long as it makes sense. My biggest hangup on the Go S right now is that it seems to attempt to bridge a gap between more traditional handhelds and the Switch-like original. And I think that approach is a bit misguided because the OG Go's high-res 8.8-inch display and its removable controllers, in my opinion, is the very thing that gives Lenovo a competitive advantage in the handheld space to begin with. Out of the box, the Go S is infinitely more comfortable and more ergonomic than the OG Go. But that doesn't have anything to do with removable controllers or its footprint. It has everything to do with the sharp corner design and the odd placement of the view and the menu buttons. The Go S does solve these issues with the redesigned buttons and the rounded controllers, and I think the VRR display, front-firing speakers, and the bottom position micro SD card slot is a huge W. But the Ryzen Z2 Go processor, married with the fact that the Go S battery size is only marginally larger, makes the device feel rather unnecessary. At least for this Windows-based model, as the SteamOS equivalent may make a better case given its starting MSRP. So if I'm being fully honest, I wouldn't trade the original Legion Go for this shiny new device, in spite of the exterior upgrades that I am envious of. But I'm glad this device exists, if not only to re-highlight and to magnify just how good the original Legion Go really is, in spite of its flaws. And that's a good segue into some steps I've taken with the original Go to help rectify some of these out-of-the-box issues. Now, the first and simplest thing I recommend doing for the OG Go, if your controllers ever start to feel loose, is to add some pieces of felt to the inner top and bottom portions of each controller. I simply cut these to size from a standard sheet of felt with adhesive backing. This allows the controllers to continue to slide on and off smoothly while maintaining a much more snug fit with the main body of the device. The next thing I recommend is to pick up some 3D rounded grips that snap on as such to immediately increase the comfort. They are fully plastic, but they have a textured finish. And if you want to take the ergonomics up another notch, you can add these Legion Go rubberized skins to the 3D printed shell itself. And finally, if you want 4 terabytes or more for a dual boot setup using Windows and Bazzite, as I have, you can swap out the original 2242 SSD using this 2242 to 2280 NVMe adapter. If you're in the market, I recommend picking up the 512 gig model of the original Go, which retails for roughly $649 or less if you catch it on sale. Add the mods previously discussed and game on. Also, if you're concerned about excessive heat or high temps, as I was, make sure to add this thermal paste to the top of the SSD and the included copper shield to the bottom of the SSD that ships with the NVMe adapter. I've been running with this setup for months now, and I haven't had any heat issues whatsoever, which I've been monitoring using Lexar's dedicated SSD software. Now check out the description if you want to learn more on any of these products that I'm using. Truthfully, battery life is the only thing that keeps the OG Go from being a fully complete all-purpose handheld, which is why I see it as the king of the nightstand or any strategic little nook around your home where a charger is near. The 8.8-inch screen is just so immersive, and the implemented Switch-like kickstand is everything. Getting back to the Legion S though, I have seen some rumors floated around that there could be a Legion Go S Z1 Extreme equivalent coming down the pipeline, but that it won't be available in the States. And honestly, if the Legion S is retailing at $730 now, a Z1 Extreme equivalent is likely to sell upwards of $800. If we're talking about an upgraded battery of 80 watt hours or more, perhaps. But from everything that I'm reading, it sounds like the battery size will be exactly the same. Honestly, out of all of the PC handhelds I've seen teased this year so far, I'm most excited about the imminent release of the Legion Go 2, which will be packing AMD's Ryzen Z2 Extreme, RDNA 4 graphics, 32 gigs of RAM, and while it's not 100% confirmed, it's rumored to be packing an 8.8-inch native landscape OLED VRR supported display and a 74 watt-hour battery. Man, if this device ships with the full-size 2280 storage configuration, the Legion Go 2 is gearing up to be one hell of a beast. And not to mention, the improved rounded controllers on the Legion Go 2 will also be compatible with the original Legion Go. So the Legion Go 2 is not only a big deal for early adopters, but for those that want to extend the life of the original Go. This is what I was getting at the beginning of the video when I said that the original Legion Go is on the brink of redemption. Because aside from the early buggy software, the controller ergonomics were by far the biggest criticism following the initial launch. But with the improved Legion Space software, better controller comfort, and the addition of Bazzite, I think the Legion Go and its successor will make a very strong case for adoption in 2025. And I almost forgot to mention that in spite of being nearly 2 years old now, the original Legion Go will still have one of the sharpest and highest resolution display panels on the market, period, considering that the Legion Go 2 will bring the resolution down to 1200p. But what do you think about Lenovo's new lineup this year so far? Are you at all interested in the Legion Go Windows-based handheld or the upcoming official SteamOS supported version? What other PC handhelds have you seen floating around this year that grabbed your attention? And with the Switch 2 just around the corner, do you think that PC handheld releases this year will see a dip in sales? Because it's pretty much a no-brainer that the Switch 2 will most likely be the biggest selling handheld of the year. As always, thanks for watching and supporting the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one.